Hello! Let's get started on the main drums for the song. The drums repeat 2 times over before the start of the song and continue to play until the last chorus of the song. To take full advantage of this repetition, we'll create a drum loop that we can easily repeat over and over again. Loops are a very important part of programming because we can give the computer a command once and then tell the computer to keep repeating that command either forever or until we satisfy some condition of our loop. Behind me I have a loop that triggers one lamp, waits a few ticks, triggers a second lamp, waits a few more ticks, and then triggers a third lamp. Then the redstone path wraps back around to complete the loop and trigger the first lamp again. To stop this loop, we can just break the redstone path wrapping back around, which will also break the loop. With redstone and note blocks, it's also possible to create a musical loop which can be started and then continue to repeat on its own, just like we want the drum loop to do. For this build, we'll need note blocks, redstone dust, repeaters, a lever, sand, stone, and another block of your choice. I'm going to use quartz block here. The reason we need stone and sand specifically is because we'll use these to control the instruments in the drum loop. A simple note block on grass will play a piano sound like this. However, there's many other instruments built into Minecraft which can be triggered by placing different materials under a note block. Here's a few different instruments we have to choose from for our drum loop. Glass blocks give us a click or hi-hat type sound. Gold gives us bells, ice gives us chimes, soul sand gives us cowbell, sand gives us snare, and stone gives us kick. Our drum loop is a pattern of kick and snare drums, so that's why we want stone and sand blocks for our build. Let's go ahead and lay out a pattern that we're going to use for the drum loop for this specific song. If we listen to the song, we can hear that the drum loop has 4 sections before it repeats. The first 3 have kick at the beginning and snare at the end. Then the last one has the same pattern, but instead of a single kick, we hear 2. So for each side, let's lay out a simple pattern with 2 stone and 2 sand on each side of this drum loop. That way we start with kick and then end with snare, and we have some extra room for the last section of the drum loop, which has 2 kicks in it. We want to leave space in between each of these blocks to be used later, so let's go ahead and fill it in with quartz block. For the first side, we should have stone, quartz, sand, quartz, sand. The second side of this loop is going to look a little different because of the way that note blocks are triggered and how they transport redstone signals. A note block can be activated by a normal redstone signal from a button, or a torch, or a repeater like this. We can activate a sequence of note blocks as long as we amplify the signal coming out of the note block using a redstone repeater, and then use either redstone dust to pass the signal to another note block, or place a new note block directly after the repeater. However, if we take the signal directly out of a note block and try and pass it to another note block using only redstone dust, then the second block doesn't sound. And if we pass the signal with dust to a repeater and then to a note block, it still doesn't sound. So we need to use a repeater to amplify the signal in order to create a sequence of sounds. We can, however, activate a note block that's directly touching an activated note block, so that these two will play simultaneously. This works only for 2 note blocks. If we add a third, it's not going to play unless we have both those blocks adjacent to the original block receiving a signal. Now we won't be using that little trick in the drum loop, but it's really helpful for understanding how redstone interacts with note blocks. The last thing we need to know before we decide how to design the drum loop is that redstone repeaters can't turn a signal. So the signal must be coming in and going out the same direction from a repeater. So a note block or redstone dust next to a repeater will not activate when the signal is sent to the repeater. We can, however, turn a signal using a note block or using redstone dust. Redstone dust automatically turns when we draw out a path that has a turn in it. And if we place a repeater on the side of a note block instead of on the end, then we can turn a signal away from the original direction. So coming back to our final block of side 1, the sand block, we plan to put a note block on top of this, so we need to take and place a repeater coming out of this block and change direction. This means that we're actually going to build the second side starting with a quartz block and starting on the side instead of the end. Now we want to build out that same 7-block pattern from before and then add another quartz block so that we mirror the start. And we're going to repeat what we just did on the first 2 sides so that at the end we have an 11 by 7 rectangular pattern for the drums, which is just 4 of our 7 block patterns and 4 extra quartz blocks so that we can change direction. Now let's go ahead and fill in each of these areas where we have stone and sand with note blocks so that we can get an idea of what our current drum pattern sounds like. You see now that we have every other block on this loop filled and all these empty spaces left. These spaces we're going to fill with repeaters for 2 reasons. First, repeaters amplify the signal to keep it from dying out as we repeat the loop over and over again. Second, the repeaters control the tempo of the song by the number of ticks we set them to. Let's go ahead and finish filling in all these spots with repeaters. Now with the repeaters down, we want to add a way to trigger this loop so that we can give it a listen. We want to add an extra block to signal where we want the loop to start. Since our loop starts on a kick, we should put the start block next to a stone block in the loop. So let's go ahead and add the start next to the first stone block that we laid down. Now let's add a line of redstone dust coming from the block down to this button that we can use to trigger the loop. Let's go ahead and give it a listen. This is way too fast. Our current delay setting is too fast for the song. So let's set each repeater to 2 ticks by clicking it just once, since they're set to 1 tick by default. This amount of delay makes the song tempo as close as we can get it to the real thing using the limited delay range that we have in Minecraft. Now if we trigger the loop with the button, we should hear a pattern similar to the tempo of the drums in the song. Okay, we're getting there, but we actually have a few extra notes. The first 3 sides of the drum loop all have kick, rest, snare, rest. And then the last side is kick, kick, snare, rest. So let's remove these extra note blocks and replace them with redstone dust to signify our rests, so that we'll have note blocks in these places. Now we should have the correct drum loop for the song. Let's check it out. And with that, we've built an infinite drum loop that we can use for the entire song. Our next steps are going to be learning how to stop the drums when we want to without, breaking them. So for now, let's move on to building the intro section.